6 years down the drain. I was standing there literally in my wedding dress waiting for the man I loved. When I finally called, some strange woman answered his phone. Turns out he'd used the entire $20,000 I'd busted my ass saving my money to buy his side piece designer bags and condoms. He had the nerve to tell me she was more important. Fast forward to him hitting rock bottom, reputation shredded. He corners me, tries to force himself on me, muttering some twisted logic about compensation. That's the exact moment my new neighbor bursts through the door. Later he admits it. Running into me wasn't some random coincidence. He told me this. Us meeting? I planned it. The white train of the wedding dress pooled on the polished floor like a soft cloud. In the mirror I barely recognized myself. Makeup perfect, a bride's shy anticipation softening my features. Today was the day we were supposed to pick up my wedding dress, exactly 1 week before our engagement party. Ethan and I, 6 years together. From awkward high school days to grinding it out together in the city, we were finally making it official. But now it was 3 p.m., an hour past our appointment time, and Ethan was a no-show. The bridal shop assistant kept her professional smile plastered on, but her eyes held a flicker of questioning curiosity. My fingers felt cold as I clutched my phone, dialing Ethan's number for the umpteenth time. Hi Ethan, can't come to the phone right now. This is... A syrupy, sweet female voice answered, pausing deliberately, a hint of showing off in her tone. My stomach plummeted. I seemed to shoot through my veins. Who is this? Oh, I'm Chloe, she giggled lightly, her tone overly familiar. He had an emergency at the lab and couldn't get away. He asked me to let you know. The lab. Always the lab. For the past 3 years while Ethan worked on his PhD, the lab had become his second home, and his go-to excuse for every lateness, every missed date, every forgotten anniversary. I fought down the rising tide of unease, forcing my voice to sound calm. Have him call me when he's done. Okay, she drew out the word before hanging up abruptly. I took off the wedding dress, changing back into my clothes. The expectant bride in the mirror vanished, replaced by a pale Ava with dull eyes. It's okay, the assistant offered kindly. Guys get busy and forget sometimes. We'll keep the dress safe for you. You can pick it up anytime. I managed a weak smile and walked out of the shop. Sometime while I was inside, the sky had opened up into a torrential downpour. The city was shrouded in a gray mist. I didn't have an umbrella. Cold rain instantly soaked my hair and clothes, plastering them to my skin. I felt pathetic. And then right downstairs from my apartment building I saw it. A scene that burned itself into my eyes. Under a black umbrella, Ethan was carefully shielding a girl in a delicate dress, Chloe, the owner of the voice on the phone. He held most of the umbrella over her, letting his own right shoulder get drenched without a care. They stood close, Chloe tilting her head up, smiling sweetly as she spoke to him. Ethan looked down at her, his expression filled with a tenderness I'd never seen before. In that instant the rain blurred my vision, but it couldn't compare to the way my heart felt, completely waterlogged. I stood there like an idiot in the pouring rain, watching them walk intimately into the building lobby. Some morbid impulse kept me from following immediately. Instead I ducked behind the wet shrubbery near the entrance. They seemed to be arguing near the elevator. Ethan, isn't this really unfair to Ava? Chloe's voice carried a hint of grievance. Forget about her. Ethan's voice was cold, decisive, cutting through the sound of the rain straight to where I stood. Right now you're more important. You're more important. 5 words. 5 poison knives twisting deep into my chest. I couldn't make out the rest of what he said. I just remember him glancing up towards my apartment window, frowning, his face etched with undisguised annoyance, as if I were some persistent bug he couldn't swat away. Rain and tears streamed freely down my face. 6 years. 6 years of what I thought was an unbreakable love, apparently worth nothing. I don't know how long I stood there in the rain, frozen to the bone, teeth chattering, before I numbly walked into the lobby. The elevator stopped at my floor. The door to my apartment, our apartment, was slightly ajar. I could hear Ethan and Chloe talking inside. I pushed the door open. In the living room, Ethan was gently drying Chloe's hair with a towel. He froze when he saw me standing there dripping wet in the doorway, then his brow furrowed in annoyance. What happened to you? Why didn't you call me to bring down an umbrella? Chloe turned, saw me, and her face arranged itself into a mask of perfectly calibrated surprise and innocence tinged with a provocative little smile. She shrank closer to Ethan, murmuring, "Ava, don't misunderstand. Ethan and I were just what?" I cut her off, my voice trembling from cold and fury. My gaze locked onto Ethan. "She answered your phone. Now you bring her home. You told her she's more important than me. Ethan, tell me, who is she?" Ethan dropped the towel, stepping slightly in front of Chloe, his face set in a protective, impatient expression I'd never seen directed at me. "Ava, go change first. We can talk later." "No, we talk now." I stood my ground, stubbornly, rainwater dripping from my hair onto the floor, creating small dark pools. "She answered your phone. You brought her here. You said she was more important." "Ethan, who the hell is she?" Ethan's face hardened. He avoided my eyes, silent for a few seconds, then seemed to reach a decision. "She's Chloe. My girlfriend." Girlfriend. The word hit me like a sledgehammer, shattering every remaining shred of hope and illusion. I stared at him, this man I had loved for 6 years, the man I was supposed to be engaged to next week, now standing protectively in front of another woman, admitting she was his girlfriend. Then what am I? My voice was barely a whisper, yet it felt heavy as lead. "Ethan, what does that make me?" He finally looked at me, his eyes a complicated mix of guilt and something harsher, finality. "Ava, I'm sorry. Why don't you go home? Go take a shower, change your clothes. Calm down. We'll talk about this later." He told me to go home? In this apartment I'd lived in for 3 years, the one we decorated together. Behind Ethan, Chloe's lips curved into a triumphant smirk. In that moment, crushing humiliation and heartbreak washed over me. Looking at this man so familiar yet suddenly a complete stranger made my stomach churn. "Fine." I nodded, slowly turning towards the bedroom. "No te has no hysterics." Just a dead, hollow feeling inside. My heart had turned to ash. The bedroom still smelled faintly of him. His clothes hung in the closet. On the nightstand sat one of the few photos we had together. In it I was beaming, snuggled against his side. It was taken shortly after we started dating in the park near our university. 6 years. My mind drifted uncontrollably back. In high school, Ethan was the golden boy, smart, great at basketball, coolly dazzling. I was the invisible girl in the back row, watching him, silently nursing a secret crush. I'd pushed myself academically like crazy just to get into the same university as him. Throughout college, all 4 years, I remained just a classmate in his eyes. I watched him cycle through brief relationships, girls who came and went, my own heart aching with a helplessness I couldn't shake. When it was time for grad school, I didn't hesitate. I followed him again, choosing the same city, determined to stay in his orbit. The pure white train of the wedding dress pooled on the polished floor like a soft cloud. The woman in the mirror felt like a stranger even to me. Makeup perfect, eyes holding the shy anticipation of a bride-to-be. Today was the day we were supposed to pick up the wedding dress. A week before our engagement party. Ethan and I, 6 years together, from the awkward halls of high school to hustling together in the big city, were finally making it official. But now it was 3 p.m., an hour past our appointment time, and Ethan still hadn't shown up. The salesgirl at the bridal shop kept a professional smile plastered on her face, but a subtle question had crept into her eyes. My fingers, cold, clutched my phone as I dialed Ethan's number for the nth time. "Hi Ethan, can't come to the phone right now. This is..." A syrupy, sweet female voice answered, pausing deliberately, a hint of smugness in her tone. My heart plummeted, blood turning to ice. "Who is this?" "Oh, I'm Chloe," she giggled softly, her tone intimate. "He had an emergency at the lab and couldn't get away. He asked me to let you know." "The lab?" "Always the lab." For the past 3 years, while Ethan worked on his PhD, the lab had become his second home, and his all-purpose excuse for being late, missing dates, forgetting anniversaries. I fought down the rising tide of unease, forcing my voice to sound calm. "Tell him to call me when he's finished." "Okay," she purred, drawing out the word before hanging up abruptly. I slipped out of the wedding dress and back into my own clothes. The expectant bride in the mirror vanished, leaving only Ava, pale-faced, eyes dull. The salesgirl offered a comforting smile. "It's okay, guys get busy and forget sometimes. We'll keep the dress safe for you. You can pick it up anytime." I managed a weak smile and walked out of the shop. Sometime while I was inside, a downpour had started shrouding the city in a gray mist. I didn't have an umbrella. Cold rain instantly soaked my hair and clothes, leaving me miserably drenched. And then just outside my apartment building I saw it. A scene that stung my eyes. Under a black umbrella, Ethan was carefully shielding a girl in a chic dress. It was her, the voice from the phone, Chloe. He tilted most of the umbrella over her, not seeming to care that his own right shoulder was getting soaked. They stood close, Chloe looking up at him, smiling coyly as she spoke. Ethan looked down at her, his gaze filled with a tenderness I'd never seen him show me. In that moment the rain blurred my vision, soaking through to my heart. I stood there like an idiot in the rain, watching them walk intimately into the building lobby. Compelled by some strange impulse, I didn't follow immediately but ducked behind the nearby bushes. Near the elevator they seemed to be arguing quietly. Ethan, isn't this really unfair to Ava? Chloe's voice carried a trace of petulance. Don't worry about her. Ethan's voice, cold and firm, cut through the rain. You're what's important now. You're what's important now. 5 words like 5 poison-tipped daggers plunged deep into my heart. Whatever else he said was lost in the downpour. I only registered him glancing up towards our apartment window, his brow furrowed with undisguised annoyance, as if I were some burden he couldn't shake. Rain mingled with tears streaming freely down my face. 6 years. The love I thought was unbreakable apparently was this fragile. I don't know how long I stood there in the rain, frozen through, teeth chattering, before numbly walking into the lobby. The elevator stopped at my floor. The apartment door was slightly ajar, Ethan and Chloe's voices drifting out. I pushed the door open. In the living room, Ethan was gently drying Chloe's hair with a towel. Seeing me standing drenched in the doorway, he froze for a second, then frowned, his tone laced with blame. What happened to you? Why didn't you call me to bring an umbrella down? Chloe turned, saw me, and put on a perfectly calibrated look of surprise and innocence tinged with a hint of challenge. She shrank closer to Ethan, murmuring, Ava, don't misunderstand. Ethan and I were just what? I cut her off, my voice trembling with cold and rage. My gaze locked onto Ethan. She answered your phone. Now you bring her home, telling her she's more important. Ethan, tell me, who is she? Ethan dropped the towel, stepping protectively in front of Chloe, his face set with an impatience I'd never seen directed at me. Ava, go get changed first. We can talk later. No, we talk now. I stood my ground, stubbornly, rainwater dripping from my hair onto the floor, forming small puddles. The phone call bringing her here, saying she's more important. Ethan, tell me who she is. Ethan's face hardened. He avoided my eyes, silent for a few seconds before finally seeming to make up his mind. She's Chloe. My girlfriend. Girlfriend. The word struck like a sledgehammer blow, shattering every bit of strength and the last shred of hope I had left. I stared at him, this man I had loved for 6 years, the man I was about to marry, now standing protectively over another woman, admitting she was his girlfriend. Then what about me? My voice was barely a whisper, yet heavy with the weight of everything. Ethan, what am I? He finally met my gaze, his eyes complex. Guilt, yes, but mostly resolve. Ava, I'm sorry. Go home. Go take a shower, change your clothes. Calm down. We'll talk later. He told me to go home. In the apartment we shared, the one we'd decorated together over 3 years. Chloe, hiding slightly behind Ethan, let a small victorious smirk touch her lips. In that instant, overwhelming humiliation and heartbreak washed over me. Looking at this man, so familiar yet suddenly so alien, I felt utterly sickened. Okay, I nodded softly, turning towards the bedroom. No te hagas no hysteriques. Just, the heart turned to ashes. The bedroom still held the faint scent of Ethan. His clothes hung in the closet. One of our few photos together sat on the nightstand. In it I was beaming, nestled against his side. It was taken shortly after we started dating in the park near our university. 6 years. My thoughts drifted uncontrollably to the past. In high school, Ethan was the golden boy, top student, star basketball player, cool and dazzling. I was the quiet girl in the back row, practically invisible, watching him from afar, burying my crush deep inside. I studied like crazy just to get into the same university as him. Through 4 years of college I remained just another classmate, watching him with other girls, brief flings that twisted my heart, though I could do nothing. Then came grad school applications. Without hesitation I followed him again, choosing the same city, the same university, just a different major. Shortly after grad school started, I mustered up every ounce of courage I had and confessed my feelings to him after a party. I expected him to reject me or at least give me the same polite brush-off he gave other girls. Instead he was silent for a long time, just looking at me before softly saying just one word, "Okay." In that moment I was ecstatic, convinced my years of obsession had finally borne fruit. Once we were together I poured everything I had into taking care of him. Knowing his studies were demanding, I handled all the chores, cooked all sorts of meals for him, even brought them to him on campus. When he was busy with lab work, publishing papers, and forgot my birthday, forgot our anniversaries, I told myself it was okay, he was working hard for our future. He was introverted, not good at expressing himself, rarely said anything sweet, and was stingy even with, "I love you." I consoled myself that engineers were just like that. Actions spoke louder than words. I tolerated everything, excused his busyness, even got used to his constant refrain of, "I'm broke right now," using my scholarship money and part-time job earnings to cover our shared living expenses. I thought if I just tried hard enough, gave enough, I could eventually thaw his seemingly cold heart. I even remembered that distant afternoon back in high school. I'd scored in the top 10 on the midterms. He was handing back the papers, paused at my desk, and gave me an Alpenliebe lollipop. "Ava, you're awesome," he'd said softly. It was the first time I'd been that close to him, the first time he'd ever said anything encouraging to me. The sweetness of that candy seemed to linger in my mind, sustaining me through countless lonely days and nights of striving just to be near him. "You're awesome. You're the important one right now. This is Chloe, my girlfriend." The sweetness and warmth of the past clashed brutally ironically with the betrayal and coldness of the present. It turned out my 6 years of devotion and tolerance were nothing but a pathetic one-woman show. He wasn't busy, he just didn't want to spend time on me. He wasn't bad at expressing himself, he just saved his tenderness for someone else. He wasn't introverted, he just never truly loved me. My heart felt like an invisible hand was squeezing it mercilessly, making it hard to breathe. In the mirror my face was sheet white, my eyes empty. I couldn't stay here anymore. This home filled with traces of him and another woman was suffocating me. I opened the closet, pulled out the largest suitcase, and mechanically started packing my things. Clothes, books, toiletries. There wasn't actually much that was solely mine. I didn't touch any of the things we'd bought together. Throughout the process the living room remained quiet. Ethan didn't come and didn't say another word. Chloe seemed to have left too. Only when I dragged the heavy suitcase to the door did Ethan appear in the living room. He looked at me, his lips moved as if to say something, but in the end it just came out as a sigh. "Ava, goodbye, Ethan," I cut him off. Without looking back I pulled the suitcase and resolutely walked out of the place that had once held all my hopes and love. Outside the rain was still falling. I had no destination, nowhere to go. There were no missed calls or new messages on my phone. Ethan hadn't even asked where I was going, hadn't tried to stop me. 6 years together seemed to mean nothing to him, easily discarded, worthless. Dragging my suitcase I walked numbly through the rain, feeling like a lost soul abandoned by the world. The rain blurred my vision and leached the last bit of warmth from my body. Suddenly the sharp ring of an e-bike bell pierced the air, followed by a startled shout, "Watch out!" Before I could react I was knocked to the ground by a sudden force. My suitcase tumbled aside, spilling its contents onto the wet pavement. Sharp pain shot through my hip and elbow, but it was nothing compared to the tearing pain in my heart. "Saudi, I'm so sorry. Are you okay?" An anxious male voice sounded above me. I looked up to see a young man in a food delivery uniform scrambling to pick up his e-bike. Rain plastered his hair to his face. He looked even more drenched and miserable than I felt. I tried to say I was fine, but my throat choked up, unable to form a single word. Hurt, anger, heartbreak. All the emotions erupted at once. I sat there on the cold, wet ground and just wailed. The guy who hit me was clearly startled by my reaction. He stood there awkwardly, not knowing what to do. "Miss, please don't cry. Did you get hurt? Let me take you to the hospital, okay?" I shook my head, crying even harder. Not because of the fall, but because of this damned fate. Why did even leaving have to be so humiliating? The man sighed, then crouched down and silently started gathering my scattered belongings back into the suitcase. His movements were clumsy but patient. When my sobs finally started to subside, he tentatively spoke. Look, the rain's really coming down, you can't just stay out here. My place is nearby. Why don't you come over to get out of the rain and take care of that scrape? I looked at him. He seemed to be in his mid-20s with kind eyes, and his expression was full of genuine concern. After a moment's hesitation, I nodded. I really had nowhere else to go. He helped me up, took my suitcase, and pushed his e-bike, leading the way into a nearby, somewhat old-looking apartment complex. His rental apartment was small, just one bedroom and a living area, but it was neat and tidy. He found a first aid kit and helped clean the scrape on my elbow. His touch was gentle. I'm Jason, he introduced himself while dabbing antiseptic on the wound. Really sorry about earlier. It was raining, the road was slick, I didn't see you clearly. I'm Ava, he whispered. It wasn't your fault. I wasn't watching where I was going. After patching me up, Jason poured me a glass of hot water and found a clean towel for my hair. Are you going through something? He asked cautiously. I fell silent, unsure how to even begin explaining. Just then a wave of dizziness washed over me and my vision went dark. I swayed, almost collapsing. Ava. Jason caught me quickly. What's wrong? Maybe low blood sugar, I said weakly. I'd been dieting recently to fit into a dress, and combined with the drenching rain and the emotional stress, my body had just given out. Jason immediately rummaged around, found a piece of chocolate and pressed it into my hand. Then he went to the kitchen and made a steaming mug of sweet ginger tea. Drinking the tea helped a little. But Jason was still worried and insisted on taking me to the nearby community clinic just to be safe. I couldn't argue with him, so I went along. The doctor checked me over and said it was nothing serious. Just low blood sugar and a bit of a chill from the rain. He prescribed some medicine and told me to rest and eat properly. Just as Jason and I were about to leave, a familiar figure burst into the emergency room. It was Ethan. His face was frantic. When he saw me sitting there apparently unharmed next to a strange man, his expression instantly darkened. Ava, are you okay? I've been calling you didn't pick up. I was worried sick. He rushed towards me, reaching for my hand. I instinctively pulled back, avoiding his touch. Ethan's gaze fixed on Jason beside me, sharp with suspicion and hostility. Who are you? Why are you with Ava? Jason frowned and took a step forward. His tone was calm but firm. I'm her friend. She wasn't feeling well, so I brought her to the clinic. Friend? Ethan scoffed, raising his voice. I'm her boyfriend. Who the hell are you to be playing the hero? Boyfriend? Jason raised an eyebrow and looked at me, his eyes questioning. I just felt a wave of irritation and disgust. These two men, one who had just betrayed me, the other practically a stranger, were now fighting over me right here, like squabbling over ownership of an object. Enough. I shot up, my head still a bit dizzy. Both of you get out. I don't want to see either of you right now. Ethan froze, apparently stunned by my reaction. Jason fell silent too. Ethan, we're over. Please don't bother me again. I looked straight at him, speaking each word slowly, my voice low but carrying an unprecedented finality. Then I turned to Jason. Thanks for today. I'll transfer you the money for the medical bills. You should go too. Ethan's face turned ugly. He looked like he wanted to argue, but meeting my icy gaze, he clamped his mouth shut, turned furiously, and stormed off. Jason looked at me, sighed, and pulled a business card from his pocket, handing it to me. Here's my contact info. If you need help with anything, feel free to call me anytime. Also, let's add each other on WhatsApp. Don't worry about the medical bill until you're feeling better. I hesitated for a second, then took the card and added him on WhatsApp. Get some rest then, Jason said before turning and leaving as well. In the now empty emergency room hallway, I was alone. I stared at the words Jason's kitchen and the phone number on the card, a tangle of emotions churning inside me. I spent the night in a budget hotel near the clinic. When I woke up the next day, the dizziness was mostly gone, but the hollow feeling inside me felt even deeper. My phone screen lit up. A message from Ethan. Ava, I'm sorry. I was too impulsive yesterday. Chloe is my advisor's daughter. She just got back from overseas and my advisor asked me to look after her a bit. You know how important his opinion is for me getting that faculty position. I couldn't really refuse. What she said was just in the heat of the moment, there's nothing between us. Don't overthink it. I was wrong yesterday. I shouldn't have said those things. How could we just throw away 6 years? Please give me one more chance. Reading these pathetic excuses, I almost laughed. Couldn't refuse? Couldn't refuse, so you bring her home? Couldn't refuse, so you tell her she's more important? Couldn't refuse, so you let her imply she's your girlfriend? He probably didn't even believe these excuses himself. But 6 years. Could you really just toss away 6 years of history like trash? My heart felt like it was being sawed with a dull knife, aching terribly. Memories flooded back. All those little moments, the happiness I thought was real, now felt like sharp blades twisting in my gut. Maybe he really just messed up? Maybe he had his reasons? Nobody's perfect, right? Everyone makes mistakes. I actually started to waver. I hated myself for being so soft-hated. This damned inertia built over 6 years. Just as I was debating whether to reply, another notification popped up on my phone. A bank alert. Your debit card ending in 061 was charged 150,000 yuan at the LV luxury store on the 12th at 11 a.m. Available balance 4691 yuan. 150,000. I sat bolt upright, my heart pounding wildly. That card held the savings I'd been building up for a long time, meant as a backup fund for our wedding and honeymoon. Only Ethan and I knew the PIN. I immediately opened my mobile banking app and confirmed the massive charge. The timestamp: yesterday afternoon while I was trying on wedding dresses and he was supposedly busy in the lab. An icy chill shot up from my feet to the top of my head. I instantly dialed Ethan's number. It rang for a long time before he picked up, his voice tinged with impatience. Ava, I'm in a meeting right now, can we talk later? Ethan? I cut him off, my voice trembling with rage. The 150,000 from my account. Did you spend it? Silence on the other end. After a few seconds, Ethan's voice dropped, laced with panic and guilt. Ava, listen, let me explain. Explain? Fine explain. I practically screamed. What did you spend my money on? It was Chloe. Ethan's voice got smaller and smaller. She saw a bag she really liked. I figured, well, we're getting married soon. Your money is my money. My money is my money. I was shaking all over, my vision blurring. So you took my hard-earned money to buy a luxury handbag for your couldn't refuse advisor's daughter? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Ethan, have you no shame? Ava, don't be angry, I'll pay you back. Pay me back? How? You're a PhD student living off a pathetic stipend. How are you going to pay me back 150,000? I demanded hysterically. Ethan stammered, unable to answer. Suddenly an even more horrifying thought struck me. My voice trembled as I asked, yesterday afternoon, when you used my card, who were you with? Another long silence hung on the line. That silence was more devastating than any answer. Ethan, my voice was cold as ice. You took my money, bought her a bag, and what else did you do? Ava, tell me. We went to a hotel. Ethan's voice was barely a whisper, but I heard every single word. Used your money. For the room. And the condoms. Boom. My mind went completely blank, like I'd been struck by lightning. All reason and emotion shattered instantly. He didn't just cheat on me. He stole my money. And then he used my money to sleep with another woman. I felt like I was going to throw up. My stomach churned violently, overwhelmed with nausea. This man, the man I had loved for 6 years, poured 6 years of my youth and heart into, was nothing but a despicable, greedy, selfish bastard. He never loved me, he was just using me. Using my feelings, using my efforts, even using my money. All the softness, hesitation, and lingering attachment vanished in that instant. Only a bone-deep chill and overwhelming fury remained. Ethan, I said each word deliberate, my voice terrifyingly calm. Get lost. Don't ever show your face in front of me again. Or I will ruin you. I didn't wait for his response. I hung up and immediately blocked his number, WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram. Every possible way he could contact me. Deleted everything. I collapsed onto the bed, tears streaming silently down my face. This time it wasn't heartbreak. It was disgust. Regret. The sickening realization that I had been blind to love the wrong person. 150,000. Was that the price of seeing a scumbag for who he really was? No, it wasn't worth it. But it was done. There was no choice now but to move forward. With the little savings I had left, I rented an apartment in the same old complex where Jason lived, on the same floor diagonally across from his place. Signing the lease, paying the deposit, moving my stuff. It all happened quickly. I just wanted to start a new life as fast as possible to get away from that unbearable past. On moving day, I contacted the bridal shop hoping to return the wedding dress and get at least part of the deposit back. The shop assistant informed me that Ethan had already collected the deposit. His reason? Wedding cancelled, bride's fault. That bastard. He wouldn't even leave me that last shred of dignity. I stood in the empty rental apartment staring out at the overcast sky. I couldn't hold it back anymore. I sank to the floor, hugged my knees, and sobbed uncontrollably, for my lost love, for my squandered savings, for the ridiculous waste of 6 years of my youth. Just as I was crying my heart out, the doorbell rang. I hastily wiped away my tears and opened the door. Jason stood there holding a fruit basket, a friendly smile on his face. "Hey Ava. So you were moving in today. Congrats on the new place. Just a little something." Seeing him, I froze for a second, then it clicked. "Jason, how did you know I moved here?" "I saw the moving truck downstairs and figured it might be you," Jason said, pointing to the apartment diagonally across the hall. "What a coincidence, we're neighbors now." "Neighbors?" I followed his finger. "That was too much of a coincidence." "Come on in," I said, stepping aside. Jason walked in and took in the scene. The bare room with just a few suitcases and boxes, and me huddled on the floor with red, swollen eyes. His smile faltered slightly, then shifted into a look of understanding. "Trouble?" he asked softly, placing the fruit basket on the only small table in the room. Maybe it was the sincerity in his eyes, or maybe my pent-up emotions just needed an outlet, but I couldn't hold back any longer. I spilled everything: Ethan's betrayal, stealing the money, even taking the wedding dress deposit. It all came pouring out. I rambled incoherently, tears streaming down my face. Jason listened quietly, never interrupting, just silently handing me tissues. When I finally finished, he was silent for a moment, a flicker of cold anger in his eyes. "That scumbag." Then he looked at me, his voice firm. "Ava, you can't just let this go. He put you through hell. He has to pay the price." I stared at him blankly. "Pay? What can I do? I can't get the money back." "And him? Who says you can't get it back?" Jason raised an eyebrow. "We go after the money and we teach him a lesson he won't forget. Do you trust me? I can help you." Looking into his determined eyes, I felt a surge of strength I'd never known before. Yeah, why should I just suffer through this? Why should Ethan get to enjoy his life bought with my money while I was left here licking my wounds alone? What do I do?" I asked, my voice choked with tears. "Simple," Jason said, a corner of his mouth lifting into a slightly cocky grin. "Give him a taste of his own medicine. He tried to ruin your reputation, we'll ruin his." And just like that, with Jason's help, a bold plan for revenge began to take shape. Jason's plan was simple and brutal, but it hit Ethan where it hurt the most. What did Ethan care about above all else? His future and his reputation. Wasn't his whole elaborate scheme to suck up to his advisor's daughter about securing a faculty position after graduation? That's where we'd strike. Step 1. Gather evidence, create buzz. Jason suggested luring Ethan in first, making him let his guard down. After much hesitation, I used a new burner WhatsApp number to contact Ethan, acting like I was still hung up on him despite the breakup. Surprisingly, he replied quickly, his words dripping with fake concern and a subtle smugness, clearly convinced I couldn't live without him. Next, setting the trap. I pretended to have partially forgiven him and suggested meeting up for one last goodbye at a well-known bar just for closure. Ethan readily agreed, probably thinking he could smooth things over again, or maybe just wanting to flaunt his new life. On the day we were supposed to meet, Jason had everything arranged at the bar beforehand. He got a few trusted friends to pose as patrons at the next table, their phone cameras discreetly pointed our way. Sure enough, Ethan showed up with Chloe. She clung to his arm, wearing that expensive necklace around her neck, probably bought with my money too, her face radiating the smug look of a victor. Fighting back nausea, I followed the script Jason had given me, pretending to be heartbroken. "Do you really not love me at all anymore?" After 6 years. Ethan, probably loosened up by a few drinks and puffed up with Chloe beside him, started bragging shamelessly. Ava, people have to move forward. Chloe can give me things you can't. Once I get that faculty spot and her dad pulls some strings with his resources, I'll make associate professor in no time. Then money, status, I'll have it all. Chloe playfully swatted his arm. Oh, stop it saying that right in front of Ava. Just telling it like it is, Ethan said, wrapping his arm around Chloe's waist and looking at me triumphantly. Besides, marriage is just about the benefits, right? Once I get everything I need out of this, once the money's right, who cares who I marry? Click. A faint shudder sound came from the next table, muffled by the bar's loud music. I sneered inwardly but put on a tearful expression. So you were just using me from the beginning, just to… All right, Ethan cut me off impatiently. Let's not dwell on the past. For old time's sake, this one's on me. You take care of yourself. With that he steered Chloe away, not looking back. I watched them leave, my fists clenched. The show was just beginning. Step 2. Compile the dirt, targeted distribution. After getting the audio and video from the bar, Jason had another idea. I happened to know Ethan's computer password. His initials plus his birthday, unchanged for years. While Ethan and Chloe were out on a date, Jason used some technical means provided by his friends. I didn't ask for specifics, probably remote access or maybe even physical, to silently copy Ethan's entire chat history from his computer. I hadn't known, but seeing it was horrifying. The chat logs between Ethan and Chloe were disgusting. Explicit flirting, mocking and scheming against me, even Ethan complaining about his advisor and bad-mouthing classmates, plus details of how he planned to leverage Chloe's father's connections step by step. It was a goldmine of incriminating information. Jason spent all night carefully compiling and editing everything. The chat logs, the bar audio and video screenshots of the $150,000 bank transfer, into one long high-impact document complete with images and text logically structured. Jason even gave the file a name with the typical programmer touch. Ethan_docs. Then using an anonymous email address, he sent this final thesis draft to the admin of the university's internal forum, Ethan's advisor, and the leaders of several active student groups known for spreading gossip. Simultaneously, he registered a new anonymous Facebook account and scheduled posts containing the juiciest highlights paired with inflammatory captions. The posts were timed to go live the next morning during peak hours when most students would be online and on campus. Once everything was set up, Jason gave me an okay sign, a mischievous glint in his eyes. Get ready for the fireworks. The next morning, a university's internal forum and major social media platforms absolutely blew up. A post titled "Massive Scandal. Comp Sci PhD Candidate Ethan's Double Life Exposed. Cheating, Fraud, Utter Lack of Morals. Chat logs plus audio plus transfer screenshots inside. Spread like wildfire." That masterpiece, the file named Ethan_docs, was downloaded countless times. Ethan and Chloe's explicit chat logs, Ethan's arrogant money talks, who cares who you marry? Rant from the bar, the records of $150,000 spent on luxury goods, his complaints and schemes against his advisor and classmates. Every dirty secret was laid bare. Overnight, Ethan went from a promising PhD candidate with a guaranteed faculty position to a social pariah. The forum's class group chat, social media feeds, they were all ablaze with condemnation. WDF. He always seemed so proper, I never knew he was such scum. Cheated on his girlfriend of 6 years, scammed her out of $150K, and used her money to buy his side piece bags and get hotel rooms? He's basically an animal. I feel so bad for his ex-girlfriend, this is horrible. He even plotted against his advisor? Letting someone like that stay on as faculty would be a disaster. Chloe's no saint either, knowingly getting involved with someone who had a girlfriend. Serves her right. The backlash exploded faster and more intensely than we'd anticipated. That afternoon I got a call from an unfamiliar number. It was Chloe, her voice sharp and furious. "Ava. Was this you? You bitch." Before I could say anything, Jason, who was nearby, snatched the phone. "Watch your mouth, miss." Jason's voice was ice cold. "What proof do you have that Ava did anything? Harass her again and we're calling the cops." He hung up immediately. Not long after, Ethan called. His voice was thick with disbelief, rage and despair. "Ava. How could you do this to me? You ruined me. Do you have any idea what you've done? You've destroyed everything." "I ruined you?" I scoffed coldly. Ethan, you ruined yourself. You should have thought about this day when you betrayed me and stole my money. That was between us. Why did you have to drag everyone into it? My future. My PhD placement. It's all gone. Are you satisfied now? He was practically screaming. Satisfied? Hardly. My voice was calm. I just got back the justice I deserved. As for your future, you brought this on yourself. With that, I hung up too and blocked his number again. But it wasn't over. A few days later, Jason and I met at a coffee shop near campus to discuss the next steps for recovering the $150,000. Wouldn't you know it, we ran into Ethan and Chloe. The moment Chloe saw me, she charged at me like a maniac, hand raised to slap me. Bitch. This is all your fault. Jason, with quick reflexes, grabbed her wrist and shoved her away. I picked up my coffee from the table and without hesitation threw it right at Ethan. The scalding liquid instantly soaked his expensive shirt and he jumped back, sputtering. Ava. Ethan pointed at me furiously, his face contorted. You psycho. I must have been blind to ever go for you. You didn't just ruin my future, you hurt Chloe. He seemed about to say more, but Chloe shot him a fierce glare and he swallowed his words. The feeling's mutual. I stared back at him coldly. Being with you for 6 years proves how blind I was. Everyone in the cafe was staring, pointing and whispering. Amidst the scornful gazes, Ethan and Chloe fled in humiliation. Jason found out what happened next through some channels. Ethan's faculty position was completely off the table. Even graduating was questionable. His advisor was deeply disappointed, reportedly considering revoking his doctorate altogether. Chloe didn't fare much better. Her family found out, felt utterly humiliated and forced her to get an abortion. Yes, she was pregnant, something Ethan had kept hidden from me. Then they shipped her off abroad, ordering her to cut off all contact with Ethan. The once arrogant Ethan, who thought he could scheme and manipulate his way to the top, ended up disgraced, broke and abandoned by everyone. Hearing this news, I didn't feel the satisfaction I'd expected. Instead, there was just an emptiness. The revenge was over, but the damage was done. The lost time, the shattered trust. None of it could ever come back. All I wanted was to get my money back and finally close this chapter. Life seemed to slowly return to normal. I started sending out resumes, looking for jobs. Occasionally, Jason and I would grab a meal, just chat. He always seemed to show up at the right time, offering support and companionship when I needed it, yet maintaining a comfortable distance. Until that rainy day. Just like the day I caught Ethan and Chloe, it was another afternoon with a torrential downpour. I was just coming home from an interview when I ran into Ethan again at the entrance of my apartment complex. He looked like a completely different person. Greasy hair, unshaven eyes, cloudy, reeking of stale alcohol and despair. When he saw me, a strange glint flashed in his eyes and he stumbled towards me. Ava. He grabbed my arm, his grip surprisingly strong. You come with me. I'll give you the money back. Let go of me. I struggled, the smell of alcohol off him setting off alarm bells. Whatever it is, say it here. Here? How? It's $150,000. You want me to hand you cash on the street? Ethan chuckled, a sinister sound. Come back to my place. I'll get it for you. His eyes scared me. That desperate, nothing to lose craziness sent a chill down my spine. Go away. Transfer the money first. I tried to wrench my hand free, but he was too strong. Transfer? My phone's dead. Ethan didn't listen, forcibly dragging me towards the direction of his rental apartment. The place he lived now wasn't far from my own complex, another old residential building. I screamed in terror, but the rain drowned out the sound and there was no one around. I fought desperately but couldn't break his hold. He dragged me into the building's hallway, shoved open a dilapidated door and threw me inside. The place was a wreck. The air hung thick with the stale smell of smoke, alcohol and garbage. Leftover takeout containers, empty bottles, dirty clothes were piled everywhere. A stark contrast to the Ethan I remembered, who, despite being selfish, had always been relatively neat. Where's the money? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, watching him warily. Ethan locked the door behind him and started advancing on me, his eyes leering and wild. The money? If you did this to me, ruined my reputation, cost me everything. Tell me, how are you going to compensate me? Compensate? My stomach plummeted. Ethan, don't do anything stupid. Paying back debts is basic decency. You're the one who wronged me. Wronged you? Ethan laughed like it was the funniest joke he'd ever heard. If it wasn't for you, I'd be a PhD lecturer by now, a bright future ahead. It was all you. You destroyed me. He was agitated, his eyes growing wilder. But it doesn't matter. Since my future's gone, might as well live for the moment. Ava, we were together for 6 years and you never let me. Today consider it your compensation, how about that? As he spoke, he lunged at me. I was scared out of my wits, screaming and dodging. In the chaos, my hand found the phone in my pocket. With a last shred of rationality, I fumbled with the buttons, managing to send Jason my live location along with a desperate message. Help me. Ethan tackled me, pinning me to the filthy floor. His hands started tearing at my clothes, his voice a broken mantra. You forced me to do this. You forced me. His breath, a disgusting mix of alcohol and stale smoke, hit my face, making me want to gag. I fought back, desperately scratching him with my nails, kicking with my feet, but the difference in strength between us was too great. My resistance felt pitifully futile. Just as despair washed over me, bang. The door burst open, kicked in from the outside. Jason's tall figure filled the doorway. Seeing the scene inside, his eyes turned bloodshot with rage. With a roar like an enraged lion, he charged forward, yanked Ethan off me, and slammed a hard fist into his face. Bastard. You dare touch her? Jason was incandescent with fury, his fists raining blows down on Ethan. Ethan, completely defenseless, curled up on the floor, groaning in pain. Jason shrugged off his own jacket, covering my torn clothes. He helped me up, pulling me into a tight embrace, his voice trembling with anger. Ava, don't be afraid. I'm here. It's okay now. Leaning against his warm, solid chest, the tension that had held me rigid finally snapped. The tears I'd been holding back burst free, streaming down my face. Jason called the police. They arrived quickly, taking away the bruised, still half-drunk Ethan. As the victim, I went with them to the station to give my statement. With the SOS message I'd sent, my torn clothes, and Jason as an eyewitness, plus Ethan's prior theft, the 150,000 yuan. The evidence was solid. A few days later, I received notice from the police. Ethan had been formally arrested, charged with theft and attempted sexual assault. He would face the full penalty of the law. After this, Ethan tried to contact me through his parents, hoping I would issue a letter of forgiveness, for old time's sake, to reduce his sentence. His parents even showed up at my apartment building, crying and begging me. Looking at their aged, haggard faces, my resolve didn't waver. Auntie, it's not that I'm unwilling to forgive him. It's that he step by step pushed himself into this abyss. Theft, attempted sexual assault. Are either of these minor offenses? If Jason hadn't arrived in time today, the consequences would have been unthinkable. I cannot forgive someone who tried to harm me, I refused calmly. Old-time sake? When he betrayed me, stole my money, and even tried to force himself on me, whatever shred of shared history we had vanished into thin air. Eventually, Ethan's case went to court. He was found guilty of theft, and the evidence for attempted sexual assault was irrefutable. Sentenced for both crimes, Ethan received 3 years in prison. I didn't go to the courthouse on the day of the sentencing. Jason waited outside with me. When the bailiffs escorted a handcuffed Ethan out, he saw me. His expression was complex, regret, resentment, but mostly just emptiness. I watched him being loaded into the transport vehicle, disappearing from view. I felt nothing, as if watching a stranger. This 6-year entanglement of love and hate had finally definitively come to a close. On the way back home, Jason was unusually quiet. As we neared my apartment complex entrance, he suddenly stopped and looked at me, his gaze serious. Ava, there's something I want to tell you. What is it? I asked, puzzled. Actually, this isn't the first time I've seen you. The tips of Jason's ears turned slightly red. I saw you many years ago. Many years ago? I was even more surprised. When? About 6 years ago, I guess, Jason recalled. At a restaurant near a university. You seemed to be confessing your feelings to a guy. 6 years ago? A restaurant? Confessing? My memory instantly flashed back to that night that changed the course of my life. Shortly after starting grad school, after a group dinner, I had gathered the courage to tell Ethan how I felt. I was at the next table that day. Jason's voice was a bit low. You were crying your heart out, but your eyes were bright, really stubborn. I thought at the time there was something special about that girl. I was stunned. So at such a pivotal moment in my life there had been this silent observer. Later I opened my own restaurant right near here. I'd see you occasionally with that guy, Ethan. Jason paused. I knew you two were together, so I didn't think much more about it. Until I ran into you in the rain that day, saw how upset you were, and then found out how he'd treated you. I couldn't help but want to help you. Jason looked at me, his eyes sincere. Ava, I'll admit I have feelings for you. I have for a long time. But that's not the only reason I helped. Seeing you being bullied, I just couldn't stand by. I stared at him, a whirlwind of emotions stirring inside me. So this seemingly chance encounter held this hidden history. So that place, Jason's kitchen, yeah, that's my restaurant. Jason smiled faintly. Giving you my card that day. I was hoping for more chances to get to know you. A few days later, Jason invited me to his restaurant for dinner. Jason's kitchen was a tastefully decorated Western restaurant, cozy and elegant. Jason cooked himself, preparing a sumptuous meal just for me. After dinner, the other customers had left. Under the soft lighting, Jason suddenly produced a large bouquet of white lilies as if by magic from behind his back. Ava. He walked over to me, his eyes gentle and serious. I know you've just been through a painful time and maybe it's too soon to talk about relationships. But I don't want to miss another chance. From seeing you for the first time 6 years ago to all the times I saw you by chance later and getting to know you recently, I've become more and more sure of my feelings. I like you, Ava. It's not impulsive and it's not pity or sympathy. It's real affection. He took a deep breath, holding the lilies out to me. I know saying, I love you might be too heavy right now. So, would you be willing to give me a chance? Let me be your boyfriend, take care of you and walk with you towards a new life. I looked at the lilies in his hands, their petals pure white, emitting a faint fresh fragrance symbolizing purity and rebirth. I also looked into his sincere, hopeful eyes. There was no calculation in them, no exploitation, only careful tenderness and warmth. My heart felt gently touched by something. The wounds of the past were still there, but hope for the future was quietly beginning to bloom. I hesitated for just a second, then slowly reached out my hand, accepting the bouquet of lilies that symbolized a new beginning. I'm willing, I said softly, looking directly into his eyes. A brilliant smile instantly lit up Jason's face. He stepped forward without thinking, pulling me into a gentle hug. The embrace felt warm, secure. Outside the window, unnoticed until now, soft white snowflakes had begun to fall. It was the first snow of the year. Snowflakes landed silently on the windowsill. Inside the restaurant, the light was warm and the air was fragrant with flowers. I knew then. My own truly new beginning had just arrived.